I was 13 years old when this happened. It was supposed to be a fun sleepover at my best friend Rachel's house, but instead that night ended with us barricaded in her bedroom, calling the police. And if I had paid more attention to the warning signs, maybe we wouldn't have stayed up there so long. Here's how it started. Rachel's parents were out of town for the weekend, but her older brother Jason was home. He was 18 and barely paid attention to us, so we had the whole house to ourselves. Just like every teenager, we planned the perfect sleepover, watch scary movies so we could act tough, way too much candy so we could stay up all night, and sneaking into Jason's stash of energy drinks because we thought we were being rebellious. We camped out in the living room, wrapped in blankets, screaming at the jump scares. Rachel had picked the lineup: Paranormal Activity, The Ring, and some old black and white horror movie her dad liked. By the time we were halfway through the second movie, I started feeling weird, like uneasy, like the air in the house felt different. I just couldn't put my finger on it at the time. I brushed it off as the movie messing with my head. But then, Jason walked in. He grabbed a drink from the kitchen, then stopped and looked at the back door. I glanced at him. What? He frowned. I swear I locked that. The sliding glass door leading to the backyard was unlocked. Rachel laughed. You probably just forgot. But Jason didn't look convinced. But after a few seconds, he shrugged, locked the door, and went upstairs. Rachel and I moved on. Looking back on it, though, that was the first sign that something was wrong. Around midnight, we got tired of movies and took the snacks upstairs to Rachel's room. Her bedroom was upstairs on the second floor with a window that overlooked the backyard. She didn't have blinds, just thin white curtains. As a parent now, I'm not sure why her parents didn't put any other curtains, but who am I to judge? I remember looking outside and thinking, anyone could be watching us right now. But I brushed that thought off. Funny enough, hours later, I woke up to the sound of a soft tap. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Like something tapping on glass. I turned over, confused. I opened my eyes and saw a face staring at us through the window. When I looked in closer detail, it was a man. Middle-aged, balding, dirty looking. And he was just standing there, watching us. How was he up here? We were on the second floor. I grabbed Rachel's arm and shook her awake. She groggily mumbled, "What?" I pointed, her eyes widening as she saw the same thing I did. Then the man moved. He started smiling and then waved. Rachel screamed, so I scrambled for my phone and Second I unlocked it, the man vanished into thin air. Jason came running into the room, half asleep, yelling, "What the hell is going on?" We both screamed at the same time, telling him about the man at the window. Jason frowned and looked outside. No one there. "You guys are just freaking yourselves out," he muttered. "We knew what we saw, but we did not have any proof there was a man there." So we sat there too scared to sleep, listening to every creak and noise for the rest of the night. The next morning, Rachel's parents came home. We told them what happened, and her dad went outside to check. He found a ladder right under her window and a pile of cigarette butts next to it, like someone had been watching and waiting. Rachel's dad called the police, but nothing ever came of it. Since that day, her dad installed cameras in her house, but he never came back. I was around 10 years old when I had the worst sleepover of my life. It happened at my friend Lily's house, a place I had been to dozens of times before. But that night, something felt off. Lily's house was old. Not creepy old, but too big for the people living in it. Her dad had passed away a few years before, so it was just her mom, and her older brother, Matt. They didn't use half the rooms upstairs, and their basement was practically abandoned. We weren't allowed to go down there. Her mom said it was because of mold and loose floorboards. The night I went over for a sleepover, just a normal night, movies, junk food, and making friendship bracelets. At some point, her mom called upstairs saying she had to go pick Matt up from a friend's house. Lily rolled her eyes. He's such a loser. She babies him. Then she grinned. But that means we have the house to ourselves. I laughed. What do we do? She thought for a second, then her face lit up. Let's go in the basement. I hesitated. Lily's mom was always strict about going into the basement, but she grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the door. I wasn't about to sit in her room alone, so I followed. The door creaked as she pushed it open. A wave of cold air hit us instantly. Lily clicked on the flashlight, aiming it down the stairs. Everything was covered in dust. The steps creaked as we descended. The basement was huge. Cement floors, old furniture covered in sheets, boxes stacked high. But the weirdest part? There was a mattress in the farthest corner with an half-empty water bottle next to it. Lily frowned. Weird. I forced a laugh. Maybe Matt was sneaking down here. She snorted. Matt wouldn't come down here if you paid him. Then we heard a sound, as if someone moving in the dark trying to be shifty. Lily aimed the flashlight toward the back of the basement. The light caught a foot. It was sticking out from behind a stack of dusty boxes. I grabbed Lily's arm. We need to go. She nodded slowly. We turned as quietly as we could and started creeping back toward the stairs. And then we heard a man's voice cut through the dark along with the foot moving. "Where are you going?" he said. I have never run so fast in my life. I shoved Lily toward the stairs, sprinting up behind her as something scrambled in the darkness. We slammed the door shut, locked it, and ran to Lily's room, panting. We immediately called her mom, panicking. Her mom got there a few minutes later. When we saw her come in from Lily's window, we ran downstairs and told her everything. Her face went pale, and she didn't say a word. She just walked to the basement door, unlocked it, and went inside. A few seconds later, she came back shaking. She called the police. Once they searched the basement, they found signs of someone living down there. Food wrappers, bottles, a blanket stuffed behind the boxes. But found no man. He was gone. A few months before, Lily's mom had changed the locks, but never changed the basement windows. Lily's mom got the windows changed immediately, and she would periodically check the basement. The guy never came back. But I'm glad we found him living down there when we did, because anything could have happened. I was spending the night at my cousin Megan's house. It was just me, Megan, and her little sister Katie, all camped out on the floor of her bedroom in sleeping bags. Megan's parents had gone to bed a few hours earlier, and outside the house was dead silent. The room was dimly lit by a small bedside lamp, casting a warm glow on the pale pink walls. Megan's room was cozy, covered in stuffed animals, posters of early 2000s pop stars, and stacks of magazines. The three of us were huddled under a mountain of blankets, whispering and giggling about which celebrities we had crushes on. Megan's Uncle Dan was staying with them for a few weeks. I had met him once before. He wasn't really her uncle, just her dad's old friend from childhood who had fallen on hard times. He had nowhere to go, so they let him stay in their guest room. Megan didn't talk about him much, except to say he was kind of weird. Earlier that night, while we were grabbing snacks in the kitchen, he walked in. His eyes were bloodshot. His clothes smelled like sweat and cigarettes. He just looked at us, smiled, and walked off. A few hours later, we were in Megan's room, half asleep, but still whispering. That's when we heard a soft creak, like a door opening very, very slowly. We all went silent. I glanced toward Megan's bedroom door. It was closed. It sounded like someone was coming inside. Then we heard another creak and a soft step on the carpet. I knew someone was in the room. I felt a lump form in my throat. My eyes darted toward the door, and that's when I saw Uncle Dan. Standing in the dark, I didn't move, neither could Megan or Katie. Uncle Dan just stood there, his breath slow and heavy, his silhouette barely visible in the dim light from the lamp. Then, in a low whisper, he said, "Which one of you is the best at keeping secrets?" Megan let out a small, sharp gasp. It was like a spell had been broken. I sat upright, my heart hammering. Megan lunged for her bedside lamp, flicking it on, and Katie stayed still. Light flooded the room, and there he was. His face was wrong, like he wasn't expecting us to react so fast. Just as quickly as he came in, he turned and walked out, like nothing had happened, like it was normal. Then Katie burst into tears. Megan jumped up and locked the door. "We need to tell my parents," she whispered. I nodded, still shaking. We tiptoed to the bedroom door, listening, but we could still hear its soft footsteps moving down the hall. Then, the sound of a door unlocking. Megan grabbed my arm. "That's the guest room," she whispered. He was going back to bed, like nothing had happened. That's when I realized he had done this before. We ran straight to Megan's parents' room and banged on the door. Her dad opened it, groggy and confused. He saw our faces and asked what happened. We told him. Everything. The next few minutes were a blur. Megan's dad stormed down the hall, banging on the guest room door. Uncle Dan opened it, rubbing his eyes like he had just woken up. "What the hell were you doing in my daughter's room?" Megan's dad demanded. Dan smirked. "I think you're overreacting." Megan's mom called the police while all of this was happening, and for the next half hour we sat in the living room, clutching blankets around us, waiting. When the cops arrived, they pulled him aside, asked him questions. At first, he played it off as just a misunderstanding. But then, they ran his name. He was a registered offender. A fact that no one in the family knew. Not Megan's parents. Not her dad, who had been friends with him since childhood. And definitely not us. He had been arrested before for targeting kids. And he had been living under their roof, right down the hall. They took him away that night, and Megan's family never spoke to him again. They changed the locks, moved houses a few years later. From what Megan told me, her dad told all of their mutual friends about what happened. I never saw him again. That's why now I always take a look at the registered offender list and keep a close eye on my neighbors and any of their friends who come near my home.